Expansion must always be from love. Expansion is Jupiterian in the sense that it's the biggest planet. It has to do with the synthesis of all truth, all sciences converging into one truth. That's how we expand, is by integrating through the harmony, the incompatibility of the diverse spectrum of truth that comes from the source, the one truth, the integrating principle of all life. People need to come together to help people in crisis. We need to intervene on behalf of each other, just as the cultural genocide in Tibet from the Chinese people. In 1998, we did World Artists for Tibet in 45 different countries. Over 2,000 artists came together to raise awareness about the cultural genocide. And so this is a time for us to intervene on behalf of each other and create the little micro models of world peace in our local communities. Just as every cell has checkpoints before it can divide, all forms of leadership on both political and economic levels need checkpoints. And even once people are in power, not let power corrupt by having continual checkpoints and methodologies to assess the psychological and sociological wellness of especially people who consider themselves leaders. A true leader is somebody who's embodying the peace and embodying the love so that we embody the future, the universal peace of the future. How do we become authorities on the communications about true identities that make us feel love, to transform all the things that prevent us from cleansing our intentions so that we can activate the universal divine love of the divine feminine? That's what the message is right now. Mars conjunct Venus conjunct Pluto is the dissolution of all toxic relationships. Greetings, beloveds. My name is Daniel Alzamora. I'm a musician, neuroacoustic practitioner, a physiotherapist, and also study astropsychology. I translate astrology charts into sound frequencies. So if you put in "no more war," it's trauma therapy for all the victims of trauma, from childhood traumas, from these current traumas, from social traumas, mass media traumas, stress, fear, anxiety. These recordings help balance the brain hemispheres to produce peak performance and optimum whole self, whole mind, whole brain functioning, so that we bring our whole self, our eternal self, into the moment. What does astrology have to say? First of all, we have to see how language is a map of reality. It's not the truth of reality. So when we talk about Ukraine, when we talk about Russia, when we talk, we realize we're living in a parallel dimension that it could be very well disconnected from ultimate reality. So we have to actually see how language is creating the insanity and the schizophrenia of a division between ultimate reality and our perceived reality. So we're all feminine to source, just as we all receive the light of the sun. So what's happening here is we have Mars and Venus conjunct. That means they are perfectly together in the season of Capricorn season. Capricorn has to do with goals, plans, how we go after what we want, how we structure our reality, how we set the boundaries, that define ourself. And it also represents how civilization embodies its understanding of natural law. It's how we create reality through our structures and our beliefs and our goals and our ideologies. So, me personally, I believe we are each supposed to embody the divine peace of divine love, and that's the solution, and that any leaders in the world, in the business or political realms, that are not rooting peace and love within themselves, they're part of the problem. So you have Venus conjunct Mars, which is the union, the divine union of the masculine and the feminine, and Venus is just about to conjunct Mars. So it's everything that the divine feminine needs to kind of release in order to completely unite with the divine masculine, and vice versa as well, because in a sense masculinity has to release its toxicity to be able to unite with the divine feminine. So Mars conjunct Pluto. Pluto represents the underworld. It could represent all the criminal aspects, everything that's happening in the shadows, everything that is damaging and all the causes of suffering. But because it's the most distant planet in our solar system, planetoid, it also represents our deepest subconscious desires and what we're attached to, and the reason we've come back into being in a body. So when Mars conjuncts Pluto, Mars is that aggressive, masculine desire to assert your will and get what you want. So an invasion is Mars is the essence of the archetype Aries, which was the Greek god of war. And so when Pluto and Mars come together, that's the activation of hell. For the Ukrainians and in the Yemen and everywhere that there's violent armed conflict, in the inner cities where gangs, in the business rooms where ecocide and the destruction of biodiversity and the sixth mass extinction, all these places where hell is being invoked by the toxic masculine. That's why the feminine is coming. The divine feminine is coming at that moment on the 24th of February, just at the moment that the invasion occurred at 5 a.m. in Ukraine. The divine feminine is about ready to teach the divine masculine what it's all about. To truly be masculine, because actually masculinity is like the flowering bloom of the divine feminine, because the divine feminine is our capacity to receive the bliss and the divinity of the Most High creatoress, the universal womb, the universal parent, the cosmic parent, the great mystery that created us. With its messengers of love, we are the messengers of love as we embody the divine feminine and the divine masculine in union inside. It's like both sides of our heart. Together they pulse as one to nourish the whole system. So this is all happening in the first house. In astrology, the first house is just before the sunrise. It's still the kind of like, it's the subconscious of the body, it's the subconscious identity, it's what we're attached to, it's what we desire, it's what we want to go after, it's our willpower and everything that affects our body and our beliefs about our body and our identity. So this is an identity war. It's threatened by NATO's continuous advances and betrayals and whatever infiltrations, toxic, crazy, fascist, Nazi, whatever infiltrations of corrupt interests that are seeking to divide and conquer. This is a time to become super aware of all of the plots, the demonic, wicked plots to divide and conquer. And we cannot be our vibrations cannot be lowered. We must embody the love, the divine union of the divine masculine and the divine feminine, because Pluto in its actual sense is not just death and suffering, but it's also transformation and rebirth and regeneration from the deepest connection to what do we truly want. This is a time to feel and activate what we truly desire, to return to the pure, to return to the virgin, to return to the sacred. How do we all identify with the Virgin Mary? We are all feminine to source, just as we all receive the light of the sun. So how do we all identify with that which is pure, that which will heal not only humanity and human civilization, but the whole planet and all of biodiversity? So Juno there also, it's in the sign of Aquarius. This means, what do we need to feel loved? how are our emotional bodies really kind of wreaking havoc and causing conflict? How do we harmonize the emotional body and the self to get what we need to feel loved? How do we channel the future? How do we let the future love us? This is what it's asking. How do we use our emotional bodies to uplift the quality of life for all beings? How do we use our unique emotional experiences and our unique talents and skills to Mercury in a distant conjunction from Saturn, logically structure the age of Aquarius, which has to do with watering the garden, healing biodiversity, healing our planet. So this Russian invasion of Ukraine is an identity war. It's fear out of like encroaching threats. It's also psychological madness. The willingness to kill is murderous. This is a psychopath. This is sociopath. We need, just as every cell has checkpoints before it can divide, all forms of leadership on both political and economic levels need checkpoints to prevent the wrong people from getting to positions of power, and even once people are in power, not let power corrupt by having continual checkpoints and methodologies to assess the psychological and sociological wellness of especially people who consider themselves leaders. A true leader is somebody who's embodying the peace and embodying the love, so that we embody the future, the universal peace of the future. You can't have people that are disgusting. They're not even people. They're monsters who are destroying for personal greed and power and vanity. Narcissistic sociopaths, they need to be in healing retreat centers where psilocybin and ayahuasca and the medicine plants are used to strip away their evil, to cleanse their evil desires and their evil intentions, so they can be reintegrated. Sociopaths and psychopaths are people who have had traumas from the time they were born, probably, and these people need love in a healing a space where beauty. They need to be in the rainforest and surrounded by trees, and they need to ingest the plant kingdom to transform the neurology that has produced psychopaths, sociopaths. So authority, Saturn, the tough love. Mercury, the mind, practical, logical, business, daily activities, communications, that we're learning how to structure enlightenment. We're learning how to structure the divine masculine and the divine feminine. We're learning how to purify our essences. We're learning to reconnect with our divine desires and the capacity to implement true world peace. Identity, we must become world peace. World peace begins at home. Expansion can only be non-toxic when it's rooted in love. Any form of expansion that's using force is toxic masculinity and destined for collapse and corruption. It's totally corrupt. Force, it delegitimizes the moral and ethical virtues, and therefore discredits and delegitimizes any initiative. You can never do anything with force. So we also have Neptune conjunct Eros. Eros is love. It's romantic love. Neptune is the depths of the inspiration and the beauty of the highest potential for manifesting divine love on the planet. This is a union where romantic love has to merge with divine love, so that our relationships are non-toxic, so we eradicate the abuse. And this is a time for false couples that are not in harmony with itself, to fall apart. Mars conjunct Venus conjunct Pluto is the dissolution of all toxic relationships. It's the death of lies and deceit. It's the death of everything that's not functional in the service of what's truly functional. So, what's really intense here is the moon is conjunct asteroid Lucifer in the 10th house, which has to do with profession and career. So we have to see this is some demonic stuff. Violence and invasion and brutality is demonic. Their mind, that mind, the moon represents the inner mind and the inner being and the emotional feelings, that anger, that rebelliousness, that demonic desire to separate from source and to create suffering and create hell on earth for people. Through military. Military only exists to create hell on earth. It destroys, it's hellfire. The military industrial complex is hell on earth. Burn illusions and merge identities so we don't get stuck into these politic wars and of conflicting interests. How does intimacy take us into the shadows? Intimacy is the adventure into the depths of our secrets and selves, and how does that affect our beliefs? What do we believe ourselves? Do we believe that we are our thoughts? This misidentification is the root cause of so much suffering. We are the consequences that we do. The North Node right now is in Taurus. This is a time of destiny, of reconnecting. Our destiny is to connect with the genius of the earth and heal the earth and heal our bodies. We have to embody this. We have to channel and envision the future. My whole book, Global Body Physiognomics, is about using human physiology as the perfect model for enlightened civilization. We are learning, ascendant, Capricorn ascendant, we are in the school of learning how to structure civilization in alignment with the nature of nature. What better way to study the nature than nature is to understand biology and physiology. This is the model that has sustained our daily lives and our ancestral lives for millions and billions of years. So it is time to use the genius design of physiology. There's a lot going on too in the second house, which has to do with resources and self-reliance. When my book is released, I pray that each of us understand the miracle of human physiology. 12 internal body systems. We need 12 external global economic systems that reflect human body systems. These 12 body systems integrate 30 trillion cells. And there's over 200 different kinds of cells. Imagine if there was 200 different kinds of humans. I mean, Cro-Magnons and Homo sapiens eradicated Neanderthals. Imagine if we could have coexisted and there was all these different kinds of human beings. That would have been so cool. Instead of this racism and fear and the fear that creates violence and the need to dominate and suppress and corrupt, all this corrupt energy of fear is because of a lack of self-knowledge and self-esteem. All this stuff in the first house is an identity warfare, identity conflicts. Who is the true self? What is the true self? This is what this time is asking us. The true self is, in biology, it is known by the consequences of your actions. Do you want to know who you really are? Ask the people around you. How do you affect them? That's who you are. That's who we are. A cell is known by what it consumes and what it produces. Every time we buy something, we are voting for that. Unethical business needs to collapse through boycotting all that is corrupt. That is how we transform the world. If every dollar or every euro or every yen is our vote, that's how we transform the world, is by only supporting things that are in alignment with the ethical, universal love, universal truth, and the absence of deceit. Because we're bringing all of that deep shadow stuff up. So this next year is going to be really powerful as the south node of the moon travels through Scorpio. As all the secrets are going to come up. All the pus of the wound is going to come up. There's going to be ego meltdowns and so illusion is melting down. So people actually can heal and mature so that we can actually begin to share resources. Because Taurus is all about me and my resources and my money, and I'm super stubborn with my horny desires of the bull markets and corrupt economics, buying and selling and exploiting other people's labor. This is a time to transform the corruption in especially money. Human physiology shows us that money should reflect adenosine triphosphate, ATP, the molecule of life for all biodiversity. Money is a battery. It can be recharged freely by doing sacred service to our local communities. Human physiology is the revolution, and I think I've said enough, but this is basically a time to connect to the dream, to use our inner masculinity and femininity to balance and extremify the passions, so that the passions are regulated by love and virtue, so that we kind of transform and reconnect with the sacred, so that we channel the future and nourish the water, the garden of biodiversity, sustain ecosystems in a way that structures civilization in alignment with the nature of nature. Namaste. Let me know what you think about what all this stuff is going on. And yeah, may there be peace in our hearts, may there be peace and love in the world, may there be peace and love in all beings, and may all violence everywhere cease. And yeah, so trauma therapy, a bliss requiem, because when you listen to the conjunction of Pluto and Mars and Venus and Vesta, it actually sounds sad. It sounds like a requiem. And this is the sadness of the loss of life. Everywhere in the world, all the victims of racism, all the victims of exploitation and oppression, this is the time for all of us who are capable of love, who have the neurology of love, to unify ourselves and recognize the limitations of language. Do not identify with the false, divisive constructs that we've been conditioned with. Do not identify with nations. Do not identify with race. Do not identify with language. Do not identify with religion. Identify with how you affect people, because that's what we're each going to be held accountable to when we leave our body. So in the service of universal love, universal truth, and total authenticity without any deception, we embody love to save our souls, so that when we face Creator, when we exit this dimension, we have no regrets. Namaste.